Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg, and this week's oddball movie is something that I think a lot of people have been wanting us to watch for a lot of time, especially since I have come out as sort of a vocal adversary of this movie. Adversary is probably not the right word. I just like the first one better, Tony.
Well, I just don't think you like 80s horror. I think that you're kind of against that from everything I've seen. Most of these movies that we review have a lot of nostalgic value for people, and you didn't have that, so you're looking at it strictly from a critical point of view, not from this is what I watched at every sleepover when I was a kid type point of view.
Maybe. But why didn't you watch Evil Dead 1, the obviously superior first film?
Because we watched Army of Darkness more.
Well, I haven't seen Army of Darkness.
That's because
we're not talking about Evil Dead 1 or Army of Darkness. We're talking about Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, it was kind of odd. Chris Becker, I think it was, nominated all sequels, did not throw Evil Dead 1 in there. I watched Evil Dead 1 before watching Evil Dead 2 just to make sure we're on the same page and we can bring up stuff from the first movie.
We have done an episode on Evil Dead 1, haven't we? I know
we did it on Evil Dead, the remake.
Oh, I remember that. I like that one too. I know a lot of fans of the franchise, and by the franchise, I mean Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, really don't like that remake. But as someone who absolutely digs on the first one, I thought that the remake really was what I wanted out of a remake of that series.
Plus, they just upped the brutality level in an already brutal movie. It looked pretty amazing.
Well, here's what I think about Evil Dead. I know that it has this reputation for being a kind of a campy, a little bit funny type of a movie, but I think that all of that campiness and all of that humor is really coming from the place where they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I'm not saying it's all unintentional exactly, but they have people in giant rubber outfits. They have, Bruce Campbell trying to act in some fairly dramatic scenes. They have all of these, some really impressive special effects, but still not quite able to hold up to the realism that they probably wanted to get. And so they're pushing for things that could be legitimately really, really scary if they had just a little bit more budget. They pull off some really incredible stuff anyway, but I think that there's just that slight edge of this isn't real and I can tell it's not real that lets people laugh at it.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely part of it. You were talking about how you only had one or two instances where you actually laughed out loud, and a lot of people say Evil Dead is more the comedic route.
Right. I'll tell you. And by the way, I said one. I was wrong. It was two. On Twitter, I said one. The first one was the farewell to arms joke. Where he chops his hand off. That was great. And then when the girl keeps hitting him after he turns back into human, that was the best. He's no, and she stops. He's like, okay, let me explain. Whoa! That was incredible and clearly intended to be humorous, and also that girl is awesome, and she didn't get nearly enough screen time.
Yeah, she was a lot better than any of the girls in the first movie as far as actually having a character. Just after watching both of those, the girls in the other movie just really, really quickly turned into deadites, so they never really got into their characters that much.
They'd kind of reverse that in this. The guys, except for Ashley, obviously, are off. I'm going to call him Ashley, by the way, because that's
even
his
he
full
turned
name.
deadite for a little bit.
He did, and that. Can we talk about from a logic standpoint? I know that. Well, there's a lot of weird character stuff in this movie. If you I don't know if you want to delve that deep into it, but his girlfriend turns into a deadite, and his immediate response is not to put her in the trunk of the car and drive and look for help or let people know what happened. He buries her at this remote cabin and apparently buries her naked. I realize that could be the deadite screwing with him later as she comes up basically naked, but it does not track. There's a lot of sort of reactions to this movie that are just there for the sake of setting up scares later on. And what was the other thing I was going to talk about? I don't know. I lost my train of thought, Tony.
You were talking about the female characters and about how Evil Dead 2 did a better job with that.
Yes. So you get the guys killed off a lot sooner, and the women are a lot more competent. But of course, Bruce Campbell is still the main guy, and he still gets a lot of the credit, which he doesn't do a lot in this. I mean, he's not the one, like, he just sort of stays alive. He just yells at the things, they yell at him, he chops up his girlfriend.
Up.
Yeah, he doesn't actually make any progress.
Like if you look at the difference between him as a character in the first one and in the second one, there's a huge difference. Like for about 3/4 of the first movie, he's kind of meek and an ancillary character, and he starts being like the sole survivor, and he starts becoming like the hero that Ash is. And in the second movie, he starts out with that kind of swagger and bravado that like he got towards the end of the first movie.
I also want to talk about that opening. I loathe the pacing of the opening so Evil Dead 2 had to, at least they felt like they had to do a thing where they basically recap Evil Dead 1. It's not really a sequel, because if you think of it as a sequel, then Ash just like left the cabin, got another girlfriend with the same name, came back to the same cabin, and got surprised again by the it wasn't called the Necronomicon, whatever the Book of the Dead is called in this. Or is it called Necronomicon? I thought it was in the first one called the Necronomicon. But
I've always heard it referred to as the Necronomicon. Like, I don't know if that's actually what it is. I can't remember right now. I always thought it was.
They don't say Necronomicon. It's the
Book of the Dead, basically.
In Evil Dead 2. They do call it the Book of the Dead, and I think H.P. Lovecraft has the Necronomicon, but I don't know if it actually gets name dropped as that in Evil Dead 2. So it's this recap thing, and it bugs me partly because I'm a huge fan of the first movie. And so it feels like it's just sort of spitting on the first movie and saying like, well, nobody saw that anyway, so we're gonna redo it again, better this time. And the second thing is because that opening section is so frenetically paced. It's just awful. Like you have literally the events of an entire movie taking place in about 10 minutes, where they drive to the cabin, the Deadites wake up, he says the words, his girlfriend turns into a Deadite, she freaks him out, he kills her.
Yeah, kills her in the same way with like the shovel swing and everything else.
Right, it's so chaotic and over the top, and the editing is, and I say over the top, I understand that people like this because it's over the top, but not in a, like, for me, not a fun way. It just feels like they're like, okay, we gotta get through this so you can understand why he's at the cabin. Okay, go. Now we have the real story.
And I feel like if you're going to a movie called Evil Dead 2, you should probably understand that things happened in Evil Dead 1. That is one of the more legitimate concerns I've heard you say with this movie, because I was trying to figure out, like, is this something that happened at the end where he was possessed and he went back and got a new girlfriend and, like, the house brought them there? Like, what the hell happened? Like, I was trying to figure that out, too. And then I was just like, I'm just going to watch the rest of this movie and not ask questions about that.
I don't think it's truly intended to be a sequel. I think it's the way they set it up. It's sort of like, okay, this is the next movie, but we do... There's a whole rights issue because Sam Raimi, I guess, sold the rights to Evil Dead 1. And he could not show footage from that, so he couldn't do like a clip show of, here's how we got here.
Yeah, at least he's able to do that in Army of Darkness. Like, Army of Darkness kind of opens with him talking about like how the Deadites made him cut off his own hand and took his girlfriend, and now he's in the 13th century. With
probably an unlimited supply of shotgun shells somehow, yes? I haven't seen it. But...
They actually show him making the shotgun shells.
Okay. I'm casting aspersions on a movie I haven't seen yet, Tony. I'm sure we will eventually.
He turns his car into a giant, deadly like lawnmower type thing and all sorts of fun. Like,
it still runs after that?
What's that?
It still runs after what it went through?
Yeah.
Which, what it went through was a portal in space and time?
Yeah. It's straight up, like, that movie is absolutely bonkers. That's why I keep thinking you're going to like that movie when you eventually do get to see it. Because it's more adventure than it is horror. It's just a really, really fun movie. Like, they straight up decide to make it a B-rate adventure movie with, like, some horror elements.
So the reason I didn't ever finish watching Evil Dead 2 was because of that opening, right? Like, it's just so choppy. And the middle of the movie gets a little better. It's on this weird, like, almost perfect incline, Tony, where the first part of the movie I just despised. I was angry. I was like, why? First of all, you're spitting on the movie that I like by remaking it, but simpler and just sort of like summarizing it. And secondly, the editing and like the pacing in here is just weird and bad. And then like it gets a little better. And I think part of it is because they're trying to a lot of the middle of the movie is Ash doing his one-man show in the house, where the special effects are really good, but I don't know that he does a great job of portraying someone having a mental breakdown. He does a great job of portraying someone who's awesome.
Yeah. He's definitely like the B-level actor and everything. It's not like he's going to put a Tom Hanks like Castaway level performance in this cabin.
But that's what I keep coming back to, is that I think that there is a vision of this movie where that actually does happen, right? Where you have an actor, and I don't want to diss Bruce Campbell because I don't have any problem with him and he does fine. But if you had an actor who was a little bit more, could dig a little deeper, you could really like have this sequence in the middle be something that's really truly horrifying, and it doesn't ever quite get there. There's a lot of stuff.
It's more slapstick than it is horror in a lot of those scenes. Like whenever they've got the overdubbing with him like just slamming his head into the sink and all that sort of stuff, it just seems a little bit silly more than it seems horrific. And then you've got moments that do get to the horror where he's like cutting his own hand off and all that.
Well, right, but the ideas are horrific. Like the idea of his girlfriend coming back and like doing the ballerina dance she was doing, you know, in the first 5 minutes of the movie as a corpse, which somehow it rotted to, you know, that state in the space of about, what, a day?
Something like that.
Again,
when the Deadites take over, like the body definitely gets all funky. Like Henrietta or whatever was only dead for like a couple days.
Oh, that's
she
true.
Was pretty messed up.
Yeah. You're right. I guess we can excuse it in that way. But that, first of all, I really like the stop motion. I thought the stop motion kind of added a little something to that scene to make it feel like something that wasn't natural. It doesn't look real, but it's not supposed to because she isn't real in that scene. But the idea of her coming back and dancing around and sort of mocking him as a Deadite is a great idea. It's, I think, really has a lot of horrifying potential, but it doesn't follow through with anything. It doesn't ever feel like it really impacts. And there's a lot of stuff like that where, like, the Deadites themselves, there's this amazing line they walk where they constantly play with, is this person really still in there? Is there some part of them? Because they'll still have the memories, they'll still have all of the stuff that they knew, but then they'll say, you know, your girlfriend's burning in hell right now. You know, how does that make you feel? And that idea of what is the fate of the people who get taken by these things? What hell dimension do they send you to? Or is it the hell of being stuck inside of a Deadite and not being able to change anything and getting chopped up by your loved ones?
There's definitely a lot of intensity behind what the Deadites actually mean. Like whenever you look at it from that aspect.
Right, but they don't ever dig all the way into that. It's another one of those ideas that's really cool and could be really, really horrifying, but it just sort of, it goes by unless you really think about it. They don't mine it for its full potential. And to a certain extent, that's why I'm annoyed at how easily Ash overcomes being a Deadite, like twice. Once the sun shines on him, he's like, well, I'm fine now. And then the other time, I forget what makes it happen, but then he thinks about his girlfriend. He's like, I'm back, the power of love.
He finds that like amulet or whatever, and for some reason that just makes it go away.
Well, no, it's his girlfriend's necklace. It makes him think of her.
Yeah. From
the beginning of the movie, that's what it's making him think of her. He remembers like being human, I guess, and that snaps him out of it. But nobody, like, the girl's mom is stroking her hair and singing "Hush, Little Baby, Don't Say a Word," and somehow that doesn't trigger her back into being. Well, I mean, she comes back, but it's like a manipulation of the Deadites. So other than just Ash is awesome, we love Ash, and I know that's the meme, but from a logical standpoint, why doesn't anybody else ever snap out of being a Deadite?
It's definitely an interesting question. I think that most people just don't spend the time to consider that.
Well, I'm sorry. I know. I know that probably somebody's really mad at me right now because I'm not coming at this in the right spirit, and I'm being critical. I'm not trying to be like bashing the movie exactly, but I am trying to come at it from like a thinky point of view. And I know that is not the level that a lot of people appreciate it on.
Well, we're also film critics, so we kind of need to be on that level a lot of times.
I did appreciate, though, I talked about the incline, though. It starts out, and I hated it. And then the middle part is really choppy. You kind of cut back and forth. You sort of have, like, the A plot, but without very much time. But once, like, everybody finally gets to the cabin, and it's just Ash and the one professor's daughter together fighting off the Deadites, it really kicks into a great movie.
Yeah.
Like, everything just really starts working there. It finds that tone. It hits its stride. The pacing stops being all weird. It's sorting itself out through the first 2/3 of the movie. And when it finally hits that final third, I think that is what works for a lot of people, is that they kind of, if they watch the whole thing all the way through, it leaves you with a great feeling. It leaves you with like a sense of satisfaction. Whereas I, initially watching it on Netflix was like, ugh, I'm not going to continue this. But back in the day, especially if you had the VHS and like this was all you had and you sat through it, you were rewarded by getting to the end.
Yeah, and it's not a very long movie either. Both of these movies are about 80 minutes.
Now, you watched Evil Dead first, and then did you go on to Army of Darkness as well, or were you able to?
That's tonight. I'm
Okay.
going to be watching Army of Darkness once we're done with the stream and everything.
I'm not misremembering this, right? Like, Evil Dead, the first one, is trying to be a horror film, basically
It's
straight
trying
up.
to be full-on solid horror. Part of the reason why it has a poster for The Hills Have Eyes in the basement that's torn in half is because it's saying, no, this is what horror really is. And that's playing off of something that The Hills Have Eyes did, where they had a Jaws poster ripped in half saying that it was just popcorn horror that wasn't good. And this is Sam Raimi trying to up the ante after he finished doing like his college work. Like, he's trying to show that he can make like a full-on horror movie that's better than all these other ones for about like 20 grand or something like that. It was really low budget for both of these movies.
Which he went out and raised himself, by the way. And looking into the making of section of this movie, I looked at some trivia stuff on IMDb. It's fascinating. They made, like, all of the interior stuff is shot inside of a gymnasium of a junior high. Like, that's the level of filmmaking we're dealing with here, where these guys, I mean, not that they weren't good. I mean, obviously you have a lot of, up and coming and talented makeup people working hard to make all these effects happen, but they weren't in some kind of luxurious Hollywood studio. They found a place where I don't know if they had to pay rent, but I'm sure it wasn't very much if they did, and everybody's kind of working
talking
for
about
points.
Like a Michigan middle school. It's not going to be like trying to rent something in Hollywood.
Exactly. And I thought it's nice to see that aesthetic come through. And even though I do have some problems with how uneven the movie is, it is unafraid in a way. It's definitely going out there and being its own thing. And it lacks the polish and the sort of veneer of a lot of Hollywood films. And I think that is what attracts people to it some way. I think people like to be able to see the strings sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's like watching Dead Alive. That movie is completely absurd, and there's like ninja priests and all that. But it also has a lot of this same type of like costume work, lots of giant creatures with like fake latex skin, lots of stop motion animation, lots of over the top gore. It was just kind of a stylistic thing at the time that people really liked.
And Sam Raimi, I got to give props to not just the special effects, but I mean, as a filmmaker, again, I didn't like the editing at the beginning, but the way he shoots a lot of this stuff is very clear and well thought out. He's not like, it's not like some chump change, just throwing this movie together. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, he has a very clear sense of craft with what he's doing with the camera, with, how he's moving things around. And it's impressive what he's able to pull off. Even when sometimes it's goofy, he's very clear with what he's showing. His cuts are, very well timed and in the right place, and he shows what he needs to show, and, uses like models in some places, and then cuts to, real live people with their head sewn into some, odd maquette the effects all work, and they're all put together in a really compelling way. I think that again, once it gets going, the editing really makes a lot of these effects work really well as well.
And it's just a testament to how long or how good a small budget movie can be and how enduring it can be, that this is a movie people are still talking about 30 years later, that somehow like Ash Williams is like heading up a TV show on Sci-Fi that started last year. It's just crazy how
don't
far
think it's
they've
on
been able
Sci-Fi.
to take this. Is it not on Sci-Fi? I thought
No,
it
because
was on
if it
Sci-Fi.
was, I would know more about it.
Maybe I'd have to look up what it's on. I thought it was supposed to be on Sci-Fi, but I haven't had a chance to watch it or Ash vs. the Evil Dead yet. Still have heard good things about it though.
Yeah, and that's interesting too because he's coming back. Like Sam Raimi came back to direct at least 1 or 2 episodes of that, and he's sort of executive producing. I have not seen that one either, but it would be interesting to see what the interpretation is. You know, all these years later, I like the idea of this sort of aging. You know, what does Ash do when he becomes middle-aged and older? What is this? What kind of midlife crisis do you have if you're Ashley Williams? Is that his name, Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is always kind of funny because the main protagonist and love interest of Mass Effect is named Ashley Williams, and she's like this bombshell, and all I can think of is, well, it's Bruce Campbell.
Does she have a chin?
She does not have that chin.
I like that when they put him in the Deadite makeup, they like make the chin even bigger. It's like this just massive, like sticking out chin. Again, I spent about 30 minutes today watching behind the scenes footage on this movie. It's pretty great.
Great. Look up a Good Bad Flicks view of or exploring Evil Dead, the first one, and you'll see a lot of really, really cool behind the scenes stuff on that. And learn a little bit more about Bruce Campbell. That chin is definitely prominent. I was about 5 feet away from him at Denver Comic-Con, and it's just out there. It's kind of crazy.
I think he's grown a chin more. I think that it wasn't as big in these movies, and as he's gotten older, it's sort of like some people's noses keep growing. I think his chin has just kept growing.
It's quite possible.
Because I was watching it, and like there's sort of that Bruce Campbell caricature face, and you don't see that a lot in Evil Dead 2. You do see it. You do see it from time to time, but you don't quite, like, he's not quite grown into the face that everybody remembers as sort of the proto Bruce Campbell face. It's still a little bit young. I don't know. Maybe that's Army of Darkness when he really kind of solidified that image.
I think it was just because he spends most of that movie he's got the chainsaw hand on. He gets this like gauntlet for a hand. They never explain how it works. It's just a big steel gauntlet that works perfectly as a hand. But you know, it's all fun.
They don't ever explain how a lot of this stuff works, so it's okay. I do kind of wish that there was more. You know, what we lose by having the one-man show with Ash and the recap at the beginning is we don't see the characters that. What is her name? The main girl who's the professor's daughter?
I don't know. I just moved off of it because I was looking.
I want to call
Sam
her
Raimi.
Nancy. I've been thinking about this movie and like what I would say kind of about her in my mind, and it was just always Nancy. Annie. Okay. Well, I wasn't so far off then, but I totally wasn't like. I didn't remember it. I was just making that up in my head. I wanted to see more of what those characters were. There was a lot of. Like the one the hillbilly hick guy,
it's
throwing the pages in the basement. I was like, why? What benefit does that do to you? You're just mad at her because she's like, maybe let's try this. She's like, no, I throw these down here with the demon thing. There's no possible way your incantation could stop actual demons. I will hit them with a shovel instead.
Yeah, the hick character was just full on panic mode. That's the only way I can explain it.
We don't get enough of that. There's that great scene where they all meet up, and there's like this odd sexual tension where the girl, the one, the Hicks girlfriend just sort of like says like, "Hey guys, we can take you where you want to go."
Bobby Joe,
what are you doing? Is this? Did you think you were in a porno in this scene? I don't get what your performance is here, but it never resurfaces. She also doesn't anyway look like someone who could get that guy to go out with her. Like that I just don't believe that. Like that sort of, suspenders wearing tow truck drive. I guess he's not a tow truck, but pickup truck driving dude gets that girl. Yeah. No, she's taking care of her. It's not like she's like trailer trash hot. It's like she takes care of herself. Clearly, she's got like the makeup and the hair all done right. She's not even dressing all that hillbilly. Like, what is she doing with that guy?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's just proximity, man. Like, whenever you spend that much time around your cousins, something bad is
I
bound
was
to,
gonna
is bound
go
to
for the.
happen.
Actually, I was gonna go for the sister joke, but
I was giving them
yes.
the benefit just because they don't look like siblings.
Keeping it classy on the Human Echoes podcast. But and she does this whole thing where they like she just appears behind them. Like, was she hiding in the bushes? Again, I understand this isn't about logic. This is The Evil Dead, but there was some stuff about that scene that just made me like question what was happening in the movie, and it would have been neat to see those people show up, and earlier in the movie and have more stuff to do so that we kind of felt it as they got killed off like they did in the first one. But oh well, you can't get everything you want, Tony.
Yeah, and one of the things I did really like about the first one is it was actually really well paced. Like I never felt like I was like, oh, like, can we get to the point of the action that's supposed to be happening and all that? Like, it was a movie that took its time to let us know who these characters were, then immediately threw them into bad situations and slowly killed them off one by one.
Well, and you were talking about too, and it's been a while since I've seen it, so I can't speak from exactly position of experience here, but Ash does have a lot more of a character arc in the first one, where he starts out as someone who's not a hero and turns into a hero. That to me is way more interesting than whatever it is in this movie,
where he's all of a sudden like twirling the shotgun with her and not even like feeling that he just cut his own hand off and all that.
Yes. It's fine that if he gets there eventually, that's cool, but like it's neat that in the first movie we see that happen. The other thing is, you kind of get it in this one. They sort of revisit the idea of someone being in the basement talking to them, but in the first one, the girlfriend, they're like taunting them as they're in this house that they can't leave, is, I think, really interesting. That's another thing that I would like to explore. I'd like to have some ideas of why can't the thing just get into the cabin? Like, it can clearly smash through like car windows and all of this stuff. Like, it doesn't seem that the wood of the cabin would be that big of a deal to it.
I always got the impression that it was just kind of toying with them for a while, and that's mostly from the first one because of how often the Deadites are just sitting there laughing at them and moving around. I know that's partially just trying to be creepy, but it never felt like the Deadites were outclassed. So it felt like they were just taking their time and doing this. Like, how often do they get people in this cabin to actually do something like that?
Yeah, and is there something special about the cabin is another good question, because the guy comes there with the book, but then like, are those things just all over the world? Like, if you read that book in New York City, would like everything turn into Deadites? Man, now I have so many questions about the lore of Evil Dead, Tony.
I'd like to see that movie. Just have like it's like the new Rings movie. Just have Evil Deads.
The Evil Deads. The Evil's dead. It's the middle plural, Tony. Like Inspectors General. Again, probably applying too much logic to this. I know that's not how people watch this movie, but it does. Those are the questions that I ask. And I think, man, we spent like 30 minutes on this. I think that is 30. About everything I have to say here.
I think so as well. Like, I'm still going to say that I love this franchise. It's one of my favorites from back in the day. Might have a little touch of that, like Big Trouble in Little China, where I grew up on it, so it's more important to me. But going back and watching these movies yesterday, like, I still felt connected to them. I still felt like they were a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen them, check it out. If you have, just go back and watch them again. And
I will say, although I did not find the love that some of y'all experience, I don't despise this movie as much as I did back when I just watched the first 20 minutes and got really, really irritated that it wasn't Evil Dead 1. It did get better, and I do sort of understand a little bit better now, especially with again, gotta shout out to the special effects, because they are incredible.
It's always a little bit jerky whenever you have like the stop motion stuff, but it never bothered me. I always liked that back in the day.
They do a good job of making it all of a piece. Like, it never feels like, oh, well, all of those effects are in the same tone. They all sort of hit the same notes. There's never like, okay, this special effect is really creepy, but then that one just looks janky. Like, there's even miniatures work when they're driving over the bridge, and you can kind of tell.
That was one of the stranger changes from Evil Dead 1 is just like the location of the bridge. Because in the first one, it's just a normal bridge that's rickety. And in the second one, it's like this bridge that they would never build over that particular cliff. Like, it's just going to one person's cabin, and it has like these giant pillars and everything that would be so expensive to make.
Again, we're digging into the lore of Evil Dead a little bit too much. Like, why did they build that bridge? Who built it? Like, what? That's probably who called the guy to come out there to put the sign up? There's another good question, Tony. How did they find out? Was there somebody else who was headed out to the cabin? They're like, oh, well, I guess I can't get out there. And they like went back to a phone to call the dude with his truck. Did the guy with the truck plan to go to the cabin and just like have sex with his girlfriend? And he's like, well, the bridge is out. I have this sign here I can put up.
That's part of the reason why that cabin burned down. It was just like a hookup place for teenagers, and it accidentally caught fire.
Wait, like in real life?
Yeah.
Like the exterior of the cabin.
Yeah,
because obviously the interior, that's another thing we didn't talk about, but the interior, the way they shoot it is way bigger than the outside.
Yeah, but in Evil Dead 1, they actually were shooting in the interior of the cabin.
Oh, yeah?
And that cabin didn't exist for Evil Dead 2. Like, they went back to actually do some reshoots for Evil Dead 1, and it was burned down.
Well, that's what you get, teenagers. You ruined our lives. Now you're old people, probably.
Probably.
Some of you have diseases
and babies of your own to go burn things down.
Yeah, their kids are probably teenagers now, doing stupid vandalism, probably breaking gravestones and stuff. I hate people who break gravestones, Tony.
I've never had
pisses me off so bad.
Like, I've walked through graveyards and stuff before, especially whenever we're like heading to friends' houses and it's a shortcut through. But we were always respectful of graveyards. It's like there's no reason to do anything like that. It's just so peaceful there.
Somebody made this 200 years ago, and this grave has sat here for all that time. My generation's gonna break it. It'll be great. Look how powerful I am. I'm 15.
I can break rocks.
Oh, I hate that so much. Oh.
I hate senseless vandalism anyway. Like,
but spray paint it, or like even if you just sprayed it, right? Spray paint it, like that's okay. That's a giant dick move. Maybe it like damages it to a certain extent. Like breaking something that old. I want to make a horror movie about that now. I want those people to get like ripped to shreds into hamburger. Is what I want to happen.
Speaking of that, we actually
in the movie,
have a question.
Not real life.
You could make a little vignette about that.
Sorry, what?
I was saying you could actually make a short film about that, which relates to one of the questions we got.
We got some questions, Tony?
Oh, yeah, we got some questions.
Hit me with one of them questions.
All right. Andy Vans, forgive me for how I pronounce your last name. It's Seoyoc, so it's like Skoyak. Says, do you think filmmakers will ever appreciate creepy vignettes? Could they find a way to promote them?
I think people appreciate. So we're basically talking about short films here, right?
Yeah, like whenever we went to Mile High Film Festival, we went to a couple where we saw some kind of bad short films, and I've seen a lot of really good short films too. Like whenever I was at Silver Screen Fest, there were some good ones.
Yeah, if you're asking about will they ever be appreciated, I think people appreciate them to a certain degree, but they're never gonna be profitable.
Yeah, the only way to make them profitable is to take the IP that's there and give the director money to make that into a full movie. Like Lights Out was notorious for being a perfect short film.
You can also bundle them. Like you can bundle them in like ABCs of Death or VHS or Southbound.
I always wondered if those are actually like profitable though. Like they've made a fair grip of them. Like I like the old horror anthologies like Creepshow back in the day with Stephen King stories. I like that one actually got a theatrical release and probably made a little bit of money. But I'm not sure that ABCs of Death or VHS or any of those are actually doing that well anymore. I'd have to look that up.
But you can at least put them in a theater. Like I like short films a bit, but there is just no scenario I can imagine where I would go to a theater to watch a short film. Maybe if there was like a local theater and they had sort of like, hey, here's our short film night. And we have cool short films and like here's an hour and a half of short films. And you sort of made it an event. I don't have a local theater that's anywhere near that cool or that would, reach out to people and sort of set that kind of thing up. But I could go to do it, but it's not ever going to bring in even the same dollars that like a small indie movie is going to bring in putting it in theaters.
It's definitely hard. I'm not sure that there is an actual way to do that. Now that you break it down like that, because I always think of them in those hour chunks that you see at a film festival.
Right.
Always then it's kind of a garnish on the film festival itself. It's not the goal. Like there's a lot of indie filmmakers that are trying to get their start and they're making that as just kind of like a thing for their portfolio.
And you'll sometimes see Pixar do short films ahead of their films. But that's sort of just almost like a vanity project. Like nobody ever goes to a Pixar film to see just the short film. They're there for the big main event. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cute. I'm glad I saw lava. That we can make our little jokes about the guys from lava, but it's not like that is not the main goal. And so it's a weird, it's a weird line to walk as a filmmaker because you got to make money eventually, like just to put back into the film. If you want to make a film that takes money, you need a film that makes money to keep making films.
And if you really want to make money, you go after those old IPs like Ben-Hur.
Man, what a disaster that movie was. I didn't see it. I'm saying, like, from a monetary standpoint, 150 million they spent, and I'm sure more because I saw a ton of commercials for it in the Olympics. What did it end up? 2016 box office. 41.4 million US dollars.
So you figure that they probably sunk at least 50 million in advertising money into that to be that prominent on the Olympics. So a $200 million project that makes about 40 some.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people complaining that they actually didn't know it was coming out.
I didn't see a trailer for it, but I also I shut down things when I see commercials now, and I probably shouldn't, but I will straight up like alt tab out of my monitor. I will turn off my TV. I don't watch commercials anymore. Like, I don't have a DVR, and I refuse to watch commercials. Like, They're just so bad. They make me feel sick.
There's a really great one out there for International Delight coffee creamers, Tony.
Is there?
I'm an adult. Yes.
Well, the thing is, like...
They have the candy-flavored coffee creamers, and this black guy's sitting there with this cup of coffee, and he's like, do I let my kids eat candy for breakfast?
Oh, I saw that
I don't.
One. I saw that one.
Do I put candy flavored creamer in my coffee? Yes, I do. And he takes a sip and he's just looking at the camera.
It's that
I'm an adult.
The satisfied looking black gentleman that's just like having the coffee. Yes. I think I did see that one at one point. I think I saw that on a YouTube commercial.
That played for me 3 times watching MasterChef yesterday, and I loved it every time. I'm in a MasterChef binge right now with my wife, season 7.
While we're talking about short films, like you could actually if people upped their commercial game, it would be a lot easier to watch them.
I think that there are
short films.
I know you don't like them, but I think that there are commercials that approach the level of being some kind of art. I mean, probably most famously, there's the Apple commercial from 1984 referencing 1984, where the rebel goes and breaks the glass of all the people chanting of the the PC whatever, everybody's the same, and Apple's like, we're different. And then it was just like, we're going to tell you about something coming up. Like, they didn't even have a product to tell you about. It was just sort of, check out our, what it was, a press conference. It was going to happen. And we're going to announce the Apple II. And there was going to be pictures and stuff. But that commercial set the world on fire at the time because it was so revolutionary. They talk about it on Halt and Catch Fire. I got to watch that show again, Tony.
I was watching. Sometimes get flat out inspired by commercials. There are a few Nike commercials that I use some of the songs from those for every run that I do, and every once in a while it's there's actual impact on there. There's an HBO boxing commercial that actually has gotten me teary eyed a couple times. It's 2.5 minutes long and pretty much a short story unto itself, but it follows a homeless man becoming a boxer, and it's just intense, and I love it so much.
The thing about commercials that's tricky, though, is sometimes the ones that you enjoy the most actually don't result in you going out and buying the thing, and so they get pulled. You're like, what happened to that commercial we liked? It's you didn't go buy Taco Bell, so they retired the dog. Okay? He didn't die. They had other dogs that look like that. There's a lot of dogs that look like Chihuahuas. They're called Chihuahuas. That wasn't the problem. You just didn't go buy more Taco Bell because of the Chihuahua dog.
I mean, I spent a lot of money on Taco Bell in my teen years.
I'm not saying you personally, Tony. I'm saying everybody, the public, that didn't respond. So it's a tricky thing when you're in the commercials game. Did we get another question, Tony?
We did. Next one is from Mr. Rich Alex, at Rich Alex on Twitter. He says, what is the funniest horror movie you've ever seen?
Funniest horror movie, man. I feel like we've talked about, I feel like it's a movie that we've reviewed on the podcast, and I'm trying to remember.
Tucker, Dale, or Dale and Tucker versus Evil. I can never remember which one is first.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil is pretty great. Yeah.
That might be it. That's still more comedy than it is horror. but it's perfect. Cabin in the Woods was really funny, and that one actually had some pretty visceral horror in it.
I've kind of cooled on Cabin in the Woods as I've like gotten further away from it. I don't dislike it. I don't like, but I think that it maybe wasn't. It doesn't hold up in my mind the way some other films do. It's sort of another one of those sort of weirdly paced movies where you really get into the Cabin in the Woods part, and then once it kind of kicks off at the end, you're sort of like, but I wanted you just to remake Evil Dead, basically.
Come on, Joss Whedon, just do an Evil Dead movie.
Yeah, I didn't really need your sort of weird, like, meta thing. I liked it when it was...
Well, it was like his criticism and love letter to horror, so it was a very interesting movie. I really still like it, but I can see what you're saying there.
Yeah, I'm not hating on it. There was, for honorable mention, I would definitely say John Dies at the End. Had some... That was just sort of like an interesting, weird movie. I don't know, there was a lot of, like, laugh out loud moments.
It was the best horror comedy book I've ever read. Not that I've read many in that vein, but it was definitely good.
I like the movie. I didn't love the movie, but I thought it was interesting. I feel like there's one that's really obvious that I'm just not thinking of, Tony. Because there's something like my brain is rattling around looking for something like, where's that? Which shelf do we put it on? Dag nabbit, where's that memory?
Well, I know that you didn't like The Final Girls as much as I did.
No, although that really wasn't a horror movie.
Yeah.
That really was not. I mean, it takes place inside of a horror movie, but it is not itself any kind of horror movie. The best part about, like, you can get some really great laughs in a horror movie that's not in and of itself funny, because you can, like, the laugh really helps diffuse the sort of buildup of tension. If you have, like, there's some great laughs in Conjuring 2. Again, not a funny movie at all, but there's that one moment where the guy, like, has the giant bazooka camera on his shoulder. He's like, man, look how small these things are now. Like, it comes after, you know, you've been built up. It's a great line to start with, but then, like, you've had this tension, you've had this, you know, sort of dread throughout the movie, and it kind of, like, lets the air out of that so it can build you back up again. Little things like that in an otherwise creepy movie can really, really work.
Well, they also added some tenderness to that movie, like whenever he's singing the Elvis song.
It definitely has a great amount of variation. James Wan is just a really smart filmmaker. I'm looking forward, the more I think about that, the more I'm looking forward to Aquaman, Fishman. Because
I actually forgot that he was doing that. He might do really well with that.
Yeah, if I don't know if I want to blame Warner Brothers for the problems or if it's the filmmakers, because I don't know. They haven't been real excited about any of their films yet, but they do have. I mean, especially like I said with James Wan, I like his previous stuff. It could be good, might not be. We said that before, Tony. We said that about Suicide Squad, which I didn't hate. I did enjoy, but it was not what I would call a great or maybe even good movie. It did make it at the box office though, which is I'm kind of happy about, because I want to see them get better. I want to see these DC movies improve.
We might be hard on DC, but it's one of those things where it's like we're hard because they need to hear this sort of thing. It's not because we want them to fail. We're not like Marvel fanboys being like, "Oh, screw Batman" or whatever. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ben Affleck does with his movie for Batman. They just announced the bad guy for that, didn't they?
I know they had a what is the guy's name? I know that they showed a screenshot of them doing screen tests for not Deadshot.
It's like Deadshot. I'm trying to remember. Like it's the guy that basically Deadpool ripped off.
Oh, Slade Wilson. Who's Slade Wilson, Tony? I know that because somebody was making a joke about
Deathstroke.
Deathstroke.
Yeah,
so he was making a joke about the fact that he's totally named Slade because that's a real person's name and not something that's made to sound like the word Slade. Which, yeah.
And that's also part of the reason why Deadpool took on the name Wade Wilson, making fun of him.
People also search for Deadshot, Deadpool, Green Arrow, Nightwing, and Cyborg. I don't know what, like, is this just like D-list super powered people? Not D-list, I guess. I mean, Deadpool's bigger now, but eventually we got to Batman. Okay. There it goes. But then back to Black Canary and Harley Quinn. Thank you, Google. I appreciate you telling me what other people were searching for. That made good podcast content.
I always want to be informed on what other people are looking at.
Was that an invasion of my privacy? Have you been looking up what I was looking for also after I looked up Deathstroke?
And now they're going to tell other people what you looked for.
Yeah, people also search for Z Nation, which is coming out later this month, by the way. I'm very excited about that. Season 3 on what is it? I think it's this month sometime. I just put it up to record. It was like, it's coming soon.
Are you going to be doing your recap of that show again?
I think so. Unless I hate the first episode. They're doing like a 2-hour for opening, like a movie, essentially, like a prequel movie. Not a prequel. Well, it's a prequel, essentially. There's the Z Nation plot basically picks up about 2 years or 3 years into the zombie apocalypse. So everybody by that time is already really familiar with zombies and how to deal with them, and like you don't have any like idiot wusses who don't know what they're doing. And so this season is gonna open with them going back to, I think, what they call the Black Summer, which is like the first summer after the zombie plague hits, and it's still kind of in the thick of it, but a little bit more raw. And also people are dealing now with like, there's still enough people where food is a problem. Like everybody's fighting over food shortages as well as the zombies. Anyway, that could be great. Might not be, Tony. We'll find out.
I think it sounds like a good idea, especially if you've had time to ruminate on it, because most movies end up showing that like right away, and that's the main story. They even went back to do like Fear the Walking Dead just to show those types of issues. So I like seeing it, but I also like seeing the action of it for a good long while.
Doesn't Walking Dead, though, the original Walking Dead, it takes place with the guy waking up. Like, it can't be that far after the apocalypse happened, can it?
Well, it's completely after the fall of Atlanta. So it's...
How long was he asleep in that hospital?
Who knows?
How did that work?
I don't know. It worked for Danny Boyle in 28 Days Later.
Well, yeah, but the idea in 28 Days Later was those were fast zombies. Like, it was 28 days. And I think at some of that point, he was, like, in a coma or whatever. Anyway. Is Fear the Walking Dead taking place in the space of a month before The Walking Dead kicks off? Is that what's going on? I haven't watched Fear the Walking Dead. I'm just asking.
From what I've seen, like, you're just watching, like, the rumblings of it start before anybody knows that zombies are coming. And then, like, all of a sudden it's in LA.
Oh, okay. So it's like they also deal with like they have the one lone zombie who just shows up and is in the hospital, and they're like, what do we do about this guy? And eventually he bites a doctor, and the doctor goes home sick. And they're like, well, I haven't seen Joe in a while. And somebody goes to check on him, and then they get bit and that kind of thing.
And then they're like, I could stop it here, but I love them too much to shoot them in the face.
Yeah. I mean, that can be great, but I have no faith in just The Walking Dead, so I don't really want to watch the spinoff.
Yeah. I still love the comics. I kind of like the show. There are moments on the show that are perfect, and then there are moments where it's just like, get to the goddamn point. It's like, I don't need 4 episodes of filler. If you only have content for 7 episodes, make 7 episodes.
Yeah, do a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Push it back and give us less stuff. We'll still watch.
Yeah.
As it turns out. Did we have any? I think we have one more question, didn't we?
We actually have a couple different questions. Like, they've come in as this has been going.
Oh,
First one is also from Andy von Skoyuk. Is do horror fans appreciate avant horror, Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, or do they mostly stick with your textbook horror?
I guess the answer to that is that there's a lot of different horror fans with a lot of different tastes.
I would honestly say that most horror fans are really a fan of the weird, of the different, like of that sort of thing. It's a very rare horror fan that isn't going to be able to enjoy a few episodes of Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or anything like that. I think that mostly they're just looking for slightly less conventional stories. And sometimes horror can be like repeats and repeats and repeats, but there's also a lot of experimentation that goes on there. Like whenever you have an idea like It Follows, where you get to kind of dig into the lore and try different things with it. So whenever you've got a show like The Twilight Zone that's really digging into a lot of different conceptual ideas, I think most people that are into the horror genre are going to like it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on basically all the points there, right? Is that horror does like the lower grade horror especially does tend to be very derivative of other horror. And to a certain extent, I mean, homages and stuff are always going to happen, but I go back to my original statement in that there are just a lot of different types of horror fans. There are a lot of people that just really like the gore and they seek that out and they're like, oh man, Eli Roth, I love that, crazy over the top stuff. And then there are some people who really like the psychological stuff. There are some people who, like you said, and probably this is where I would fall in more, is just like looking for something different and weird and surprising.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the middle between those two. I like psychological horror a lot, and I like weird movies. I like ghost stories a lot too. So,
yeah, ghost stories don't get done enough. I feel like horror kind of tends to go these days, especially does a lot of sort of human-based horror, a lot of slashers and things. That's one thing that's nice about the Conjuring movies is that it's just a ghost. It's just like a freaky otherworldly thing that you don't really understand, and there may or may not be rules for. But I think that one of the things that those movies do really, really right is setting that in a period in the past. So we've talked about this a lot on the show about how that the modern day, I think people just can't take that kind of stuff seriously for the most part. You need to sort of harken back to another time when people sort of really felt like that was more of a possibility to make that kind of horror work. I don't say you have to. I mean, there may be some great horror that could happen, but you do have to deal with the sort of more scientific, humanist sort of thing that has become more prevalent today than it was back in the 80s and the 60s and those kind of eras.
Hell, even in like Stranger Things, you saw one of the kids that was like hard logical that always wanted to be like, well, there's got to be something going on here. Like it's just not what we think it is. Like the black kid was more rational and everything.
Can we talk about Stranger Things for a second, though? By the way, this is something that's been in my craw and I'm irritated by. I've heard some people criticizing Stranger Things recently, which is fine, by the way. You're welcome to not like Stranger Things for whatever reason. However, for me, at least, Stranger Things is not about nostalgia. I didn't experience any of that stuff, okay? It is not pushing... It is an homage to a lot of other movies that took place in the 80s. And I could appreciate it on that level, but we're not... Like, I'm not just needing to relive my childhood that didn't happen the way it happened, anything like that way in the Stranger Things. I didn't get to watch E.T. when I was a kid. I didn't, like... That was not my childhood. I don't feel nostalgic when I watch Stranger Things. I just think, hey, wow, they really nailed that aesthetic. I like the way that looks.
There were definitely aspects that like hit me in the nostalgia, even if it's just like a bunch of kids riding their bikes around, getting into trouble. Like that was pretty much my childhood.
Never happened to me. I had a bike. I never got into trouble.
Oh, we got into minor trouble.
Lame.
It was always just like stuff we could never tell our parents. Like we never told our parents anything. My friend got hit by a car and we were afraid to tell his mom.
Did you tell his mom?
No.
Eventually?
She never found out, ever, that he got hit by a car. Yeah. We convinced her that
he was all... She's listening to the podcast right now, Tony. Psych! He's going to be in so much trouble when he gets home.
We convinced her that he was all bruised up and battered because of a bad tackle and two-hand touch football. And that those older kids really shouldn't play so rough. It's like, why would she be mad if someone else hit her son whenever we waited for the green light and everything? We waited for the crosswalk sign. But, kids aren't so smart.
I think the fear is not that she would be mad at him. If I'm a kid at that age, I would think like, well, if I tell my mom that I got hurt like this, she's not going to let me go out again.
Yeah.
Like she's going to say, oh, the roads are dangerous. Stay inside.
I think we were about 4 or 5 miles away from where we were supposed to be at the time.
I thought you were going to say 4 or 5 years old. What? Now I'm questioning everything. That's definitely not my childhood experience. My 4-year-old sits inside and watches a lot of television and has his phone. One day he might get a bike. I've been trying to get him to ride a bike. He likes the idea of bikes. He's not good at pushing the pedals.
Yeah, that coordination will come soon enough.
Maybe. He is doing that therapy. You said we have one more question?
The last question comes from Donald Eitflugt, who asks, is Evil Dead 2 Sam Raimi's best film?
No, that's Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2 was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no question. Well, I mean, he might have better films than Spider-Man 2, but Evil Dead 2 is not. I'm gonna look up Sam Raimi.
You still haven't seen Army of Darkness. That could end up being your favorite Sam Raimi. He did He did A Simple Plan, which was really good. I actually really liked The Quick and the Dead, but I haven't seen that since I was a kid, so I might not be remembering it properly. Like, it's one of those that
I saw
Simple
Plan. Was that him? Wow, that was great.
Yeah,
that was written by the same guy who wrote The Ruins, by the way, the book that they got turned into the movie for that.
Yeah, Scott B. Smith.
There's a lot of movies that are better than Evil. In my opinion, many movies better than Evil Dead 2.
I need to go watch that when a kid. Get some Billy Bob Thornton Paxton action in my life.
Yeah, that's just straight up drama too. Like he just, really did great on that. Let's see. I'm looking. He directed Oz the Great and Powerful. Probably not that great. I haven't seen that one. I've heard people talk up Drag Me to Hell a lot. So that's, again, not one I've seen.
But I have not seen that one either. I started it and I can't remember why I couldn't finish it. I think I just had other plans. He did Darkman, which I've always heard good things about, but I have not seen.
Yeah. Darkman between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, by the way. Interesting period there for him. What is the arc of Evil Dead, right? So he makes Evil Dead 1 in 1981. He comes back for Evil Dead 2 in 1987. Clearly, we were talking about Evil Dead earlier, the idea that one of the things that I was actually willing to cut a little bit of slack with on the whole recap idea is that there was a real good chance that you might not have gotten to see Evil Dead. Like, it's not like they had...
It's pre-VHS. It's like...
I think they might have had VHS by the 80s, like the late 80s.
Yeah, it just wasn't ubiquitous. It wasn't like in every single household having it, especially not in 1981. Probably by the end of the 80s, though, like most people had it.
It just seems like the whole decision to make an Evil Dead 2 feels like an odd... Like, why not do a spiritual successor? I mean, maybe he just did, maybe he didn't know that was a possibility. But I'm legitimately asking anybody who knows, did The Evil Dead, the original one, have enough name recognition and clout to make it worth making a sequel, Evil Dead 2? Or was that just sort of Sam Raimi saying, well, I want to stick with Bruce and I want to stick with this idea, so I'm going to keep making this as a series? Because almost, I think the Evil Dead 2, if it was made as like basically the Evil Dead, but okay, let's do some things different rather than we really need to recap the first movie and, call it Evil Dead 2. If they called it, Deadites or I don't know, Evil Dead Again or Dead by Dawn or anything, you can just keep Bruce Campbell in there, but make it, do the movie again with the the newer effects and the new stuff you thought you could figure out to do. I don't know what the arc is there. I don't know how Sam Raimi came to get there. I'd like to read about that. I'm sure there probably is a book. There's a book about everything these days, Tony.
Bruce Campbell has a book, like The Life of a B-Rate Actor. Kind of want to read that sometime.
One of these days. He also directed Crime Wave.
Sam Raimi or Bruce Campbell?
No, Sam Raimi. A pair of whacked-out, cartoon-like exterminator hitmen kill the owner of a burglar alarm company and stalk the partner who hired them, his wife, and a nerd framed for the murder, who tells the story in flashback from the electric chair. Okay.
Interesting.
I bet that one is not one of his good ones, Tony. I've never heard of that before.
I've heard the name, but I definitely haven't seen anything of it.
It has 5.8 stars. You know what it's time to do, though, Tony?
It's time to end the podcast.
It's time to wrap things up. We've talked for an hour. We've done our bit. Now it's time for you to do your bit. Tell them what their bit is, Tony.
Their bit is to go to humanechoes.com and become a member. Becoming a member is the #1 way to support us. It is how we keep doing this. It puts food on Al's kids' plate. You don't want them to starve to death, do you?
Jack is really hungry.
Yeah. So if you go to humanechoes.com and you click on the Become a Member link, there are a lot of different options. He's in school.
He's not even in the house.
Hopefully they feed him there. But it's $2, $5, $10, or $20 a month with tons of different stuff. We are getting the new pins this week going out to our, I believe that's either a $5 or $10 member. We should probably look that up sometime. But
one of these days,
if you become a member, you get lots of cool bonus stuff, starting with the bonus podcast. Then it goes on to postcards, it goes on to buttons, it goes on to other merch that is only available to members. You can always buy a shirt from TeePublic, but the only way to get these buttons is by being a member. So thank you guys.
And you get your awesome shout out at the beginning of this here podcast that you're listening to right now.
Yeah, someone might actually get one before this one comes out. We shall see.
That'd be exciting.
Another great way to support the podcast is by clicking on the Amazon links that are at humanechoes.com. If you don't want to spend any money on us, if you spend money on Amazon, which you all do, admit it, you buy that freaky weird stuff. Like, we can get a cut of that if you go to humanechoes.com and click on the link on the right-hand side or in the Amazon links throughout our articles.
And we will see you guys next week with... We didn't talk about this, so there. By the way, some of y'all kept voting after the voting closed.
Yeah, we thought the voting was supposed to automatically close at midnight, but you know what? That setting didn't get saved.
So this is actually, if you go to the post right now, you will see different results, but these are from the screenshot that was taken at midnight or right thereabouts. Deathbed, the bed that eats, actually ended up in the bottom place. So it was almost didn't make it in, Tony, and it actually tied for Troll 2 with 64 votes. So we might have to do an honorable mention Troll 2 episode sometime in November.
Which that's a movie that, considering our content, should probably be covered anyway.
Yes. Then Evil Dead 2 was up just a couple votes ahead of Deathbed. 1 vote ahead of Evil Dead 2 is a movie that I know Tony's looking forward to. And this is what we'll be doing next week. Pitch Perfect 2. That's next week's movie. And then the final 2 will be The Perfect Host with 73 votes and Wetlands also with 73 votes. Thanks to Lindsay for putting that ticket together.
On Twitter basically walked around her office being like, you need to go here today and vote for Wetlands because Al really doesn't want to see it. I don't know if I want to see it. It looks pretty gross. But I think I'll enjoy it a lot more than Al will. So this week, Pitch Perfect is the one that's going to just absolutely break my heart. And then next week, it starts getting a little better.
By the way, we're both looking forward to The Perfect Toast for real, because Lindsay's been wanting us to do that one, and it's actually one that she's just like, I just wanted you guys to cover it. This is the only way I could make you watch these movies. That's what Viewer's Choice Month is for. And we're in it now, Tony.
Anyway, thank all of you for being a part of this. Be sure to check out thewritersarena.com in the coming weeks because we are starting our tournament. And thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great week.
Bye.
Self-betrayal,